Welcome back. You're on the couch at Fidelity with Mike DeLashmutt. My special guest today, Jason Chipman, who's the 120th District Representative. It covers Phelps County, a lot of Phelps County, almost all of Crawford County, and he's a first-term representative. That being said, I know that when there was a series of several things that happened. There was a special election that came up, and that's when you were voted in. But you didn't just sign up and get elected. How did you manage to get in when nobody knew who Jason Chipman was?
It was a lot of hard work. As I said before, Sean won the special election. He had a lot going for him. He was the pick of the party. The local committee picked him, and the local committee is made up of the committee members from Phelps County and Crawford County that are in the 120th District Committee area. And so I was interested in the special election, but I didn't know how to go about it. I contacted everybody that you didn't need to contact for it. I contacted the governor's office, the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the House, and it was the committee that makes the decisions. And not having been in the political process before, I didn't know.
Gotcha.
So that being said, I decided, this is my shot. I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. And if I win, great. If I don't, it'll be a good learning experience, and I'll learn how to do it better next time.
There you go.
But so yeah, I did have a lot going against me. Sean had, since Jason was turned down anyway, regardless of whether he won the special election for the Congress seat, he was going to be out of the House because of term limits. So Sean had planned on running for his seat beforehand. So he had already started building his organization. He had already been out campaigning, going to events. And so I had a lot to work against. Sean had a lot more money than I did. And so I had to really do it the old-fashioned way, which was to get out there and outwork him. And I spent less money on my whole campaign than some campaigns spend on food. So I really did it on a shoestring budget. About half the money that I spent for the primary was mine. So it's tough. And things are expensive, signs are expensive. I was lucky my sister owned a screen printing business, so she was able to help me out. She made some good money off of me, which was good for her business. But it was difficult to get out there, still working every day, still taking care of a family. My wife was pregnant at the time with our fourth child, so not only was I still working to put food on the table, roof over our heads, take care of everything at home, and then try and get out and go door to door as much as I possibly could.
And that's really where it's at, especially in our communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because you have so many different media. I mean, a lot of our television stuff, for example, in this area, if you're not living in Rolla where you have cable or Sullivan, but if you're in Steelville, you don't have a cable. So folks there are going to have to get their news another way, which means the old-fashioned way, knocking doors. Hi, I'm Jason Chipman, right?
Absolutely.
And then attending everything from the Boy Scouts having this thing, or the Girl Scouts having that, or FFA and all the other events, just so people know who you are. And I know that when you did have the election, then of course the reason you're here is because you won, and then you went to the big house, not the wrong big house with the bars, but the big house there in Jeff City. And I'll bet it was very enlightening, wasn't it? Did it work? The processes work like anything you thought they did?
Well, the learning curve is steep, and it's nothing like you see on TV. It's nothing like you see in the movies. The process to get a bill passed is very difficult. Not only is just the process difficult, but you have to get so many other people to agree with you. And we come from different parts of the state. We have different backgrounds. We have different priorities. So convincing them that what you're trying to do is the right thing to do is hard in itself. And then you have personality conflicts. You have to be able to manage that very well. You have to realize that everybody up there is more than likely a type A personality. Some people are A- personalities, some people are A++ personalities.
There you go.
And learning to navigate that was very hard. I'd never stepped foot in that building until I got elected. When I was young in school, my class didn't go, so I've driven by there a few times. But I was totally new to the process, and I went up there without any expectations, and I think that served me well because I didn't expect to walk in there and run the show, and it wasn't going to happen anyway.
Right.
But I'm trying to absorb things as they come and then process it without a filter. I think that's one of the benefits I have of not having been in the process before, is that I'm not colored one way or the other. I can look at it with a fresh set of eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that appealed to a lot of people that I talk to, is getting some new blood in there and figuring out some of the problems in a new way, because obviously the old ways aren't working.
Right. Well, and the legislature are the folks that actually make the laws,
Mhm.
and the executive branch is, they enforce the laws.
They're supposed to enforce it.
Enforce the laws, but
Supposed to.
Supposed to, yeah. We see how that works at
And
the
the
national
courts-
level. Yeah,
And
right.
the courts are supposed to interpret the
And they
laws.
interpret. So that's why we still have in the state, we still have your three branches of government.
Mhm.
We have a bicameral, which is a House and a Congress, right?
House and the Senate.
Or House and Senate,
Mhm.
that makes up the Congress. Living in Nebraska, they just have a unicameral. They just have one. But you guys do have
It's
two.
the only state. It's the only state left that's like that.
Yeah, I know, and it's kind of weird. But we had folks that lived across the street, and that was she was the head of that thing, and so I learned a little bit about it when we lived in Omaha. But anyway, so you have the two different groups that the two different houses, whatever they're called, that bring bills up. I guess they can come up on either side, right?
Yes.
So
The only bills that can't are the appropriations bills. They have to start in the House.
okay,
Per the Constitution.
because you're the ones that do the money,
Yes, we're the ones that appropriate the money. And it's the same way in the U.S. House.
right?
The House, or in the U.S. Congress, the House has to start the appropriations process, to negotiate with the Senate, then all that
And they
gets
get it all
passed.
figured out.
Yeah.
Well, it's really neat to see the way that once you get it up there and you get things that start working, you get your bill up, get your bill up there, and then it's not, excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze. It's not, this might be a great time to break for a commercial, I'm thinking. Wow. All right, maybe I'm through it. But anyway, once you get the bill, you come up with an idea, you try to solve a problem or address an issue, you get the bill up. Then you take that and you say, okay, I have a bill, I've got 4 other people, or whatever it is, whatever that magic number is, and they say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Then they take that up. What's the next part of the process, and where does that go? I have a bill. Here's a piece of paper. Here's what I've written down, and we all signed it. Where do you go from there? Because I don't think anybody
Well,
has.
nobody signs it.
Oh, nobody signs it.
No, okay, so
Okay.
this is how it works. I have an idea for a bill. I go to research, and they will tell me how the bill needs to be written. And more often than not, they'll write it for you.
And these are probably lawyers, right?
These are all trained lawyers who are experts in particular chapters of the statutes. So they know how to write in what I call legalese.
Yes.
We have the fewest number of lawyers in the legislature in over 100 years, which is a good thing. But you need a couple of them around to tell you how to read some of this stuff. So you have an idea, they write a bill, you decide if it's good or not. If it's good, you have to go file it. Once that bill is on file in the clerk's office, then you need to ask the speaker to refer it to a committee. And that often includes writing a letter. So you write a letter, the speaker refers it to the appropriate committee, depending on the substance of the bill. Then you have to write another letter to the chairman of that committee and ask them to have a hearing. Then you get a hearing, and then you sometimes have to wait for them to vote on it. If they vote it out of that committee, it goes to what's called a select committee. And that's just another standard of getting eyes on the bill. And they bring in more people to look at it. And so you'll have another hearing. That hearing is more formality. You don't have as many witnesses. The chairman of that committee will be, of the first committee you went to, will be on the select committee. And so they'll at least know something about it. And so then you have that committee. If it passes that, then you have to work with the floor leader to get it on the calendar to be heard on the floor. So then once you have it on the calendar, you debate it on the floor. It's called perfection in printing. So that's when you can introduce amendments to the bill. And let's say there are no amendments. You have the greatest bill ever.
There you go.
And so that day it's voted on, it's just a voice vote, and it's perfected and printed. So that's the final way the bill is going to be. So the next day, you have it third read, which means everybody presses the button to say yes or no. So let's say it passes that. So that means you passed the House. Now it needs to go over to the Senate. You got to get the bill assigned to a committee. You got to ask
Do the same thing over
you
again.
got to ask that committee chairman to have a hearing on it. Once it gets through that committee, then you have to convince a senator to actually carry your bill on the floor, because by rule, I am not allowed out on the Senate floor while the Senate's in session, which means I can't present my bill to the Senate. You have to get a senator who agrees with your bill and is behind your bill to actually introduce it on the Senate floor. So let's say it goes through all that without any changes. It passes the Senate, then it goes to the governor. Now, what often happens is if you have a great bill like that, one house, or the House or the Senate, whichever one it comes to second, will put a lot of amendments on it. They say, hey, this is a great bill. Let's hang all this stuff that's not so great on it.
Yeah.
And it becomes what's called a Christmas tree, because it's got a lot of presents
Yeah.
underneath it. And sometimes you don't like some of the presents you get. And so what happens then, let's say the Senate puts a bunch of amendments on it, then it's got to come back to the House, and we have to approve
Because
or
if they
deny
make
those
if they
amendments.
make even one change,
One
to
change.
it,
Change
it has
one
to
word.
come back to you.
Change a
to
word, a comma, a period, anything in the bill, it has to come back to the House.
and then you have to vote on again,
We have to vote
with
on
or
it.
without any changes. So
Yes.
you can change their changes.
So let's say that, let's say we agree with their changes, we pass it, then it goes to the governor. If we don't agree with their changes, we'll go to what's called a conference committee. We'll grab some people out of the House, usually the bill sponsor, the committee chairman that the bill originally went through, and one other person, and they'll meet with some senators, and they'll hash out an arrangement to try and get the bill
They'll try to
passed.
compromise.
They'll take out whatever amendments they don't like and go through it that way.
So then that committee, as it were, or that group, then they will take back to each of their
Yes.
groups, okay, they agree with this, and we agree with this, let's go ahead and vote on it the way it is.
Yes,
And so now then, everybody pushes the button and it gets passed by some majority, whatever that is.
just a simple majority is all you need.
Simple, okay, so now it gets passed,
Then
now it
to
goes to the
governor.
governor's desk.
Mhm.
Then the governor has a choice to say yes or no. If he doesn't sign it, he can veto that bill.
Yeah,
And
well,
then-
if he doesn't sign it at all, it automatically becomes law at a certain date.
Okay,
So he has to say yes or no if he wants to really have a say in it.
so no is the only thing he really can do to it, because it's gonna be yes either way.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
So he either signs it yes, or it's gonna become yes, or he can say, no, I veto this bill,
Mhm.
and then in that case, it gets kicked back to everybody to
Yeah.
do
By
it again.
statute, by statute, they only have so much time to say no. Otherwise, it's gonna pass.
Just goes through.
Yeah, and so if the governor says no, then it'll come back and we'll be able to try to override his veto in September. If it happens early enough in the session, and this actually happened in the last session, and we did this with the budget, they wanted to get the budget out early last year, so they finished it up early, got it sent to the governor, so that way, if the governor vetoed anything, we would be able to try to override those vetoes while we were still in session. And what that would do is it would give some certainty to the departments, because the fiscal year starts July 1st. So if they have to wait until September for us to try to override any of the vetoes, that leaves them in limbo, leaves them in kind of a bad spot. Are we gonna get the money or we're not gonna get the money?
So nobody does anything for a couple months
They sit
until
on their
they,
hands and they don't wanna release anything, and that could hurt some vital services
sure.
that some of the citizens need. And so that's something that we've tried to do last year. We're gonna try to do it again
Get
next year.
that budget done early.
Get it
Yeah.
done early. And
You
that
mean
was,
you don't wanna do it like the federal government, where they go until midnight and say if it doesn't go in by midnight, and so 11:30, they're doing that last hour final Hail Mary and.
well, what I'll tell you, that I am not a fan of the process that we have either. And what happened was it got down to the wire, and the Senate and the House conferenced till early in the morning. They finished it, and then we were voting on it at 10 o'clock that day. So my argument, I voted no on some of these budget bills, and my argument was, what person could be reasonably expected to go through at least one of those bills, understand it, understand the changes that were made, and how that was going to affect their district? And I kept hearing, well, you have to trust them, you have to trust them. Well, Ronald Reagan said trust, but verify.
Mm-hmm.
You can only trust them so much. They're not me. My constituents didn't elect them. They elected me to do their work at the Capitol. And if I don't have time to read through and understand what those mean, they could put anything in there.
That's it.
You know, one of the things that got put in there was statewide managed care for Medicaid recipients, which wasn't the way it used to be. But that got thrown in at the last minute. And, you know, it was a big enough deal that I heard about it in the 3-hour window between the time they agreed on it and the time we were voting on it, that I heard quite a bit from some of my constituents that that was a bad deal. So I voted against it. I am not a fan of it, which is one of the reasons I'm introducing the bill for a top to bottom audit of the executive branch. We don't have time for it. We're on 4 committees, we've got our own bills to go through, and we're only there for essentially 4 months. We don't have time.
Right.
You know, we make $35,915 a year, and we're expected to go out and provide for our families after that. We don't have time. And I just don't think it's a good way to run the government, looking at what you had last year and say, well, we just want what we had last year.
Right.
That's not a good way to do it.
And I do hope that that bill does get up and get some traction and goes through, because I think it would be nice for everybody to be accountable and have somebody actually that, you know, if I take my car to my neighbor to fix, it may not get fixed, so I'm going to take it to a mechanic that knows what he's doing. Likewise, when you're talking about facts and figures and numbers, you know, for me to look at that would be one thing, but for an accountant to actually look at it that knows what those things mean, I agree. I think somebody that's a professional needs to look at those numbers and then see where the fat is, cut it off, see what's working, get rid of it, and make those, at least make those recommendations. And then once again, we know that what recommendations are just that, they're recommendations.
One of my biggest philosophies on government is it needs to work. Big, small, doesn't matter. If it doesn't work, it's useless.
There you go.
And right now, there is no incentive for government workers to improve the process. If they get down to crunch time, it's the end of the fiscal year and they still have money left over. What do you think they're going to do? We don't want to get our budget cut next year, so we're going to spend money.
Just spend it whether we need
We're
to.
going to spend it on office equipment or something.
Well, I think we're going to have to come back and revisit this in another day and just talk about this. But we've been on the couch at Fidelity. My guest today, again, is Jason Chipman from the 120th District. We thank you for being with us today. We'll have to come back and revisit this bill and see how some of these things go. Thank you for sharing with us the process. Wow, it kind of spins your head around a little bit, but maybe hopefully, if you have questions, like I said, we'll put the contact information on the screen, and then you can find out what your representative is doing and all of those kinds of things, and ask him questions. And I'm sure he'd love to be. He is your employee, by the way. That's the way this works. So thank you very much for joining us today, and have a great day.